Makena is from CLASP, and she's an energy research manager at CLASP. She's very passionate about research, and research is what makes us do things from an informed perspective. She is working in the clean energy access space, access, because we can do all what we want to do, but if access is still a barrier, then we will not have made strides. She is passionate about social impact, social and environmental impact, and the benefits of access energy in Africa. And she's been doing projects in Asia and Africa. She will talk to us about charting the energy and interoperability transformation in this region. Makena, we are ready to listen to you.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you so much, all the organizers, for the opportunity to speak to this session. So shall I share my slides, or are you sharing from your side?
You may share your slides so that you can proceed
Okay,
at your pace.
perfect.
Yes.
All right, let's just put this in presentation mode. Just give me 1 minute. All right, is that visible to you all? Perfect. So our previous speakers have given us a really good context of the energy space globally and in the country. And then, also kind of given us an idea around innovations that are happening in the sector, in a specific energy sector, and also now moving towards this kind of off-grid space too. So what I want to talk about this morning is on the third bit of that equation, which is interoperability. And how that has the potential to kind of move us along that innovation chain and deliver services. So as you heard, my name is Makena. I work for CLASP. CLASP is an international NGO. We've been around for 20 years, and our focus really is energy efficiency through the use of really high efficient high performing appliances of good quality. We are also the co-secretariat for the Efficiency for Access Coalition, which is a body we're trying to coordinate donors, investors, market players around the idea that increasing efficiency is really another tool that we can use for wider energy access across the sector. And as I talk about interoperability today, I want to give examples from the off-grid solar sector, which is what I'm most familiar with, and which is where we have some kind of concrete steps and road mapping towards kind of wider interoperability. So maybe we start here with a little bit of a kind of definition. What are we talking about when I talk about compatibility and interoperability, and can we use this interchangeably? But really, we're talking about the ability of systems to work together, to function in the same kind of hardware and software environment without kind of affecting each other. And when we're talking about electrical devices, since we're talking about energy here, it's really when we connect these devices to a power source, and we're connecting more than one device, how are they working without really having an adverse effect? And when we push the concept of interoperability further, we move from that idea of just like that electrical compatibility to now communications and kind of being able to have devices communicate with each other, moving into the IoT sphere, where protocols are shared between products. And that kind of we can unlock so much with the ideas of interoperability. And as we move towards a place where kind of devices are able to interoperate, we need to eventually be thinking about how we govern that, what technical standards we form around that, and how we can make sure that we are kind of all moving in the same direction. We're standardizing and we're moving in the same direction. But this is just to kind of give that the context of what I'll be talking about. But as we move towards interoperability, I think we have we have to weigh things. It's not all kind of positive, or depending on which side you are as a stakeholder, there are things to weigh up. So in terms, for example, for the consumer, an open system where, let's say, an appliance is completely interoperable with whatever energy system they're using, whether it's kind of an off-grid system, which is DC based, or an on-grid system, it can really open up the market for consumers, right? It can lead to really great market growth because we are standardizing across, and we don't have this kind of locking customers into one way of doing things, for example, with specialized connectors or things like that. Products and services and information can really come down in cost. We can be able to kind of move into greater competitiveness, and people really specializing in their business model rather than in the technology, in the gadgets, right? But really specializing in service delivery. And that would give customers choice, would give us a better experience and much better value for money. But on the flip side, the idea of having a really kind of bespoke product where, you know, you are, as a company, you have a very specialized way of kind of connecting your systems. It's very bespoke. It's all about like your service offering as a company is really attractive because it brings that uniqueness to your business. It allows you to really vertically integrate from hardware to software to the financing that you're offering. In a world of pay as you go, it also allows you to kind of, you know, have this customer offer financing and be able to kind of manage repayments because like the customers are sort of quote unquote locked in. And that kind of more closed system can feel like it's presenting a lot of advantages. And it can feel sometimes that the open system could be quite risky in terms of your customers, or being able to support them better, and being able to offer them quality, given that you can't control kind of the products that they put together with your systems, for example, in an off-grid space. So there's this balance that companies and the sector will have to think about hard and kind of pick and choose. Obviously, although I'm trying to be objective, I think an open system could offer a lot of opportunities where there's interoperability. And that's what I want to talk about next is, you know, in a system where things are able to work together, communicate with each other, and when I say things, I mean product and the energy supply side, what would that do for consumers? What would that do for the sector? And where are the opportunities? As I was saying before, it really offers a wide choice in the market of appliances. You know, as people are kind of moving from just accessing the electricity, you know, the electrons, and moving towards wanting energy services, you know, that are provided by, for example, cooling provided by refrigerators, or wanting to access TVs in off-grid spaces. Having that choice open to consumers is going to be kind of a game changer, and interoperability would enable that. It also would attract some of the big players that we really would like to see come into the sector. In the off-grid market, we are kind of still, you know, very bespoke in terms of like the kind of products that are available for consumers. And we still haven't attracted the big players into the space. And I think part of that is because, you know, there's kind of this niche spaces where we don't have the big order quantities that the big appliance manufacturers would be interested in. But if the systems are interoperable, then people could aggregate that demand for appliances, for example, and present that to kind of a big player. And that might be able to attract them into the space. For distributors, we're allowing them a much wider choice of what to couple with the energy systems. Right now, a distributor has to be can be quite kind of restricted in what they can offer the consumer, because if they buy one type of solar home system, let's say, then they have to buy a complementary type of appliance because, you know, they kind of only go together, and there's no kind of open system where they're able to mix and match. So it could offer a lot of value for them, and allow them to also switch easily between providers. That would also lower costs. I mean, being a system where there's almost a monopoly doesn't do great for the market. So opening that up would just also bring down some of the costs. And then the environmental benefits are really huge. Right now, we're starting to see people sort of stacking their appliances. So because your appliance is tied to your energy system, if you want to buy a different appliance, you have to buy a whole system. And what happens to the smaller, older system that you had? That although solar e-waste is not the biggest proportion of e-waste in the region or even in the country, we're starting to see that this could be a problem. And the contribution to e-waste from a lack of interoperability or inability to repair, all those kind of issues will eventually kind of lead to a problem in the amount of solar e-waste that we're producing, for example. And then obviously it would be great to mitigate the risk of having kind of a non-harmonized system of, for example, plugs. I think we've seen this already in the conventional market where I wonder how many people have had this experience where you buy a new phone and it all of a sudden comes with a different way to connect your headphones, or a different way to charge it. And now you have to buy a whole other system to support that specific device. So this kind of non-harmonization that's already happening in kind of in the wider space, we can de-risk that early on and make sure that we're building a system that is kind of future-proof. Um, but we also obviously don't want to just talk about opportunities without paying attention to some of the inherent risks. I mean, it's completely possible that consumers might have a really hard time being able to match, for example, their appliances with their energy systems, or not doing that in a way that enhances the service delivery. And that could lead to kind of some dissatisfaction in consumer circles. Also, if we go to the pay-as-you-go companies, these are the companies that are offering financing. They're creating a brand around some of these appliances, and so there is that reputational risk if a mismatch happens, and consumers don't get the service that they're expecting. Obviously, warranties and after sales of items that are not on brand, that people are choosing kind of to buy and mix and match, will also be very difficult. We already know in our sector, in our region, warranty and after sales services are a massive problem. We are not able to kind of, people are not able to access the warranties anyway, even when things are kind of streamlined. So in an interoperable system, in a place where we're being interoperable, that could be a little bit more difficult. The complexity in marketing and sales when there's kind of so much on offer could also come in, and especially when we're targeting rural customers that are off the grid and remote, that messaging could be complicated to deliver. And we would need some sort of certification framework. Now, building certification frameworks or standards, testing, consumer labels, all that system, that infrastructure is a big kind of task. That would be a big task for the sector to kind of build this whole framework. And obviously, if we transition, for example, to new connectors, there could be some operational challenges. So we're not saying that there are no risks associated with the idea of having a system that is more interoperable, but I think some of these risks, there are ways to mitigate them. And none of them, I feel, are insurmountable. So I just want to now give you a quick idea of, as we talk about what is the roadmap, what does it look like to move towards more standardization, more interoperability, where are kind of our roles, where can we play a role towards a system that's like that. We built this when we were thinking about interoperability at the Efficiency for Access Coalition. We built a sort of roadmap because we were starting to see the challenges that would occur if we moved in a way that that the sector just moves without kind of putting this at the forefront, putting interoperability at the forefront. So we charted this path that moves from, a very kind of hardware type of compatibility, with the connectors, with the electrical interfaces. This kind of standardization in this area at the bottom of the screen there would have the biggest benefits for manufacturers and suppliers. And you can move all the way up towards kind of standardizing things like diagnostic, how you control load, standardizing all the way even up to the payment platforms and kind of the mechanisms we use around payments and financing those payments. And those would really will be the parts where we're starting to unlock the benefits for the consumers and distributors. So this is a kind of path we envisaged from kind of standardizing, moving from the bottom up, from the more physical hardware side to the software side. And standardization is really going to be that building block to allow interoperability. We feel, that there is going to need to be some major investment. Obviously, the more heavyweight players who are very active in the space will need to come in. We need to kind of buy into the idea, because if we can change the sector, starting from, let's say, companies that have a massive share of the market, then that becomes an easier transition. And obviously we have to have a very compelling reason as to why we should kind of change the system and move towards something that's more interoperable. Um, so what we've started to do here, here's an example of what we've already started to do in the off-grid solar sector. So together with the GOGLA, the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association that represents solar home systems manufacturers, distributors, we have a working group, an interoperability working group, where we're working through what would it take to achieve interoperability at the solar home system space. So starting there, starting kind of with the low hanging fruit and working our way to bigger systems. And how we've decided to arrange this is we're first going to start with the low hanging fruit of the connectors. Already, it's an issue that every company has its own type of connector, and that can cause kind of a lot of challenges in trying to make systems more interoperable. So that's where we're starting with a connector standard that is being discussed in this working group. And then we're going to proceed to talk about now the communication protocols, electrical interfacing, and then kind of branch out, because we also realize that there's, not all companies are going to want to do the same exact thing. Some want a very kind of bespoke, secured way, for example, of managing payments, and that's not somewhere they're willing to compromise to go interoperable. Whereas others are willing to kind of have a more standardized form of kind of this data exchange, as far as even to the payment exchange, but with some digital security incorporated. So that's why you see section number 2 and number 3 are kind of split out, because we're kind of trying to explore these two different avenues and see which takes track. Because if we don't also bring the sector with us and do what serves the sector, then we can't just do it for ourselves. It has to also serve the needs of the sector. And this is kind of to just put more color to that, a schematic of what we envisage that looking like. So the connector standard is really trying to address the appliance and their kind of connection to the control unit and standardizing that. And then the pay-as-you-go link, or that communication protocol, is trying to address the exchange of information. But this kind of the Nexus channel or the Nexus channel core, depending on which way we go down, is going to address that next level of the controlling payments or locking and unlocking systems. So just a schematic to make that a bit more visual to interpret. And really all these areas kind of start to complement each other to bring about full interoperability. If you go all the way to like, this Nexus core channel with the protocols around, payments, then we are achieving kind of full interoperability, but we can work independently on these different sectors with the knowledge experts, and make sure that we're trying to kind of join up. So what would it look like if we were to form a wider roadmap for interoperability in the sector? I think if we work through this from the top down, what the services that the market has right now are kind of, they're okay. We are growing, the sector is growing, the market is growing, but I think there's so much, we could get to so much better. So we could work ourselves to a place where we're delivering even better services, more cheaper energy services that is, and cheaper to the end consumer. And that's going to need different products and different services. A movement forward, the current technology that exists right now, to some technology, some which we're starting to get an idea of what that technology could look like, but even more technology in the distant future that we haven't yet kind of envisaged, right, or worked on. And that means we have to build technological and we have to build this technology, and we have to build the competencies around the use and application of this technology. So we need new technology, we need improved design, and that necessitates R&D. A lot of R&D has to go into improving what exists, but even into kind of formulating new ways of interoperability. So whether it's these communication protocols, the security kind of features that have to be integrated into these protocols, all these things are kind of things that are evolving and kind of need a lot of R&D. And there are massive resources that should underpin that. So support, communication, and ideas exchange like we're doing in a conference like this, but also a lot of funding needs to come into the sector. We need incentives for companies to kind of move towards this area, for other actors also to kind of buy into the ideas of interoperability and start to move the sector towards that. And we also have to underpin all this with quality assurance, making sure that whatever we're doing, we are kind of maintaining that quality in the way that the energy is being supplied, but even in the way that the appliances are being kind of developed so that we have greater energy services. And so for us in the off-grid sector in this working group, this is how we are seeing that happening. I think I've already kind of talked about the stack, which comes all the way from the connectors into these communication protocols. But associated with that technology part, we are also looking at the market and the development transition, because we can't just work on the hardware. We also have to work on how we get the market to move towards kind of this future that we want to see. So weighing up the risks and benefit for the sector and making those really available, thinking about what the testing and certification and all that is going to look like, gathering market intelligence as well to understand kind of what that future would look like, but also how that affects the market for different players. And we're doing that through a lot of industry coordination. So there's a steering group, there's the technology working group that I've talked about, and a lot of stakeholder engagement with partners, with the technical sector, with commercial players and financial institutions, all of who kind of play a big role into kind of enabling interoperability in the sector. So I mean that's my last slide. And just to say that I guess the idea of interoperability can sometimes feel so techy, but I'm glad that I'm also talking to an audience that is quite technical, and that's always exciting. But the bigger picture is that if we move to a system where we are kind of moving towards interoperability, there's so many benefits to RIP, and not only just for the consumers, but even for us as a space, for actors, for the energy engineers that were being spoken to this morning. There's just a lot of opportunity, and the risks I think can be mitigated to get to that future. So thank you all so much. My email is there. You can reach me for any questions.